Real estate investing can bring big reward and big risks. So know your risks. Welcome to the Real Estate Risk Report, the show for real-world insight on real estate investment risk. Now, here's your host, Lance Pederson.
Thank you for joining us. This is Real Estate Risk Report. I'm your host, Lance Pederson. So today I have with me Kevin Brenner with Nimbus Capital. He's also the co-host of the Active Duty Passive Income podcast. How you doing, Kevin?
Hey, Lance. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be a lot of fun. And looking forward to it.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate you taking the time to join us here. So, usually start out, right? Like how did you get into real estate? I know that you're captain in the U.S. Air Force, so you've got and have had sort of a day job and a career path that you took. I'm always curious to hear how a guy like you sort of ends up balancing those things and sort of getting deep into the real estate space.
Yeah. I think you hit it right there when you said balance, because it's a balance, man. I got like 3 jobs, but So I started out relatively oblivious to the whole thing. I knew, let's rewind 3 years now. I knew, hey, listen, real estate's a good thing to do, but I was renting and I was living in Savannah, Georgia, and I was renting and, I actually thought about buying. So I'm renting in this small apartment building. There's like 8 other units and it's like an A-class building or something. And right next to me, one of them comes up for sale. And I was like, I should buy something so I have to pay rent, right? Like screw rent. Yeah. I was like one of those guys. Yeah. And, and it was listed for some insane amount of money. And I didn't know what underwriting was. I didn't know. I didn't actually put an offer in. I guess I got too scared or whatever. I was like, this looks like a lot of work. I'll just keep paying my rent, whatever. So then, a couple months later, a buddy of mine, I played in a volleyball league. And, we're playing beach volleyball at the park and hanging out. And a buddy of mine tells me he just bought his 7th house. And I was like, what? I was like, you're a lieutenant. I'm a captain. I make more money than you. How the hell are you paying 7 mortgages? That doesn't make sense. And then he started to explain, and this is like on our beer break, on the beach on a Friday night. And he starts explaining like good debt versus bad debt. Of course, my eyes glaze over because who the heck knows what that is. And he throws me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He goes, read this. That weekend, I read it in like 2 days. Read the entire thing, changed my entire life. It's one of those books. I'm sure you get it a lot.
Well, it's the same for me. I mean, I remember, I remember, download the audiobook, listen to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's like it does. It's a mindset shift. It shatters a paradigm you have, right?
Oh,
like,
my God.
You thought you were looking at it right. It's like no, you're not looking at it the right way.
Yeah, no, and I thought I was doing pretty good for myself. I'm an officer, I'm captain in the Air Force. I had this career path thing going, like every couple of years, as long as I don't screw up, maybe I'll be a lieutenant colonel someday. Yeah. 20 years from now, and ride off into the sunset with my $2,000 a month pension, which now that I say that out loud is nothing that won't support nearly anything with regards to my lifestyle, but. It helps out, and I think that's what a lot of military people get caught in that trap because they don't think there's another way. So, what I did was I started learning about real estate, and a couple months after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I bought a quadplex. So I used my VA loan entitlement. So I had a 0 down loan, bought a 4-unit apartment building. And about 40 days after closing on that apartment building, which cash flowed from day one, which is great. So I was doing all the underwriting. I figured it out. I got orders up to Washington, D.C., and they shipped me up to D.C. And, so 40 days after I close, I'm up in D.C. and I'm doing all these remote rehabs. So we're rehabbing the place. We're getting tenants out. I'm doing everything remote. I got contractors doing stuff, sending me pictures, doing the whole thing. And a couple months later, I was like, man, this is awesome. I raised $85,000 and purchased another one right up the street. Mm-hmm. Another quadplex, did the same exact thing, rehabbed all the units, added a ton of value. And I started building out this formula in my head. I was like, okay, I can buy an asset. I can, kind of like that Burr mentality. Started, I guess I'm glad I started at 4 units because that turned me on to multifamily. Yep. And then I was like, okay, well, how can I get into bigger multifamily stuff? And that kind of, turned me on to some other events, and I was attending up in Baltimore and DC and learning. But all along that path, I found this community, Active Duty Passive Income. And I joined really at its infancy. There's about 1,200 members in their Facebook group. And I don't even remember who turned me onto it. I think someone in my LinkedIn network said, "Hey, you should check this out." And I joined this Facebook group, and man, it's like one of those things where you just find your family, like when you walk into a room and you just, you're like, wow, I'm home,
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, there's new people, and they had this thing called the 30-day Facebook Live challenge. So they were just promoting this thing, like there's like 1,200 people in the group, and it's like, go live for 30 days in a row and share your story, add value. So I spent, a couple of days writing down day 1. This is what I want to talk about. Day 2, all the way to 30. And I did this straight live for 30 days and just adding a ton of value because I felt like it was home, I didn't want anything in return.
Yeah.
And, eventually, that turned into I was adding so much value that Markian Sitch, the CEO, called me and he's like, "You just want to like work with us, man? Like, like what do you, what's your end game here?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like fun." Yeah. So I've been with them and we've been building such an incredible community of military real estate investors. And, and it's the thing that I love the most about what I do with them, besides doing the podcast and have my own mastermind now with them and the course we created and all that stuff. But it's having that light bulb go off, like we were talking about, being able to facilitate that light bulb, and everyone's light bulb is different.
Yep.
So for me, it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. For you, the same thing. Some people, it might be, completely different book. It might be an audio book. It might be a meeting, anything that you can facilitate. It might be this podcast for some people listening right now.
That's right.
That are like, whoa, you never know, but you just got to create content and share content and add value, come at it with a value first approach, and you'll do great. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing real estate since and been educating in the space and helping as many people as I could and learning a ton along the way. And, it bled into what I do now with active duty passive income and the director of single family education. So I run everything up to their 4 units. So wholesaling, short-term rentals, all that stuff, buy and hold, BRRRR. I teach all that, how to do that and connect people where they need to be. And then I very recently launched my latest venture. I founded a private equity firm, Nimbus Capital, and that is that's a whole nother conversation. But I'll be happy to answer questions about what we do. But that's more, your audience is probably stuff with large commercial multifamily. Yeah. And we're a fund, and we essentially blind pool fund the capital, and we invest as LPs into other syndications, and we're able to offer extreme diversification, and invest with partners that we know and trust. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it is. And I saw that you guys do that, and I'm a huge proponent of that strategy. In fact, if one of the big initiatives that I have is to help foster more formation. Because I mean, I kind of, I'm even the point where, we need to name this. It's private equity, but it's like micro real estate private equity, right? And like in your case, you've made the leap to realize like what you've done. A lot of times, people, it dawns on them, they don't know what they're they realize like it would make more sense. I know how to figure. I've got relationships that I've developed with operators. I know how to tell whether a deal's good or not. Right. I've got a community of people that know, like, and trust me, right, who don't necessarily know what I know. I can add value, and how to funnel that into like I said, a pooled vehicle. Now for me, it's, for you went through the journey and kind of got there, right? For me, one of the things I've spent, the last 8 years doing is consulting on the formation of funds, right? So of course, for me, like, I've been doing it like for a living, like that's part of what we've done is help, architect those things. But even now, having done it like 180 times with people, over that time with the real estate guys, you start to realize that, I mean, of course, there's lots of questions, and as much of it is sort of just teaching and training and preparing, right? It's coaching, mentoring, right? So that they kind of develop the right mindset. You're becoming a steward of capital. This is different. Obviously, there's a bunch of securities laws, all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, early on, I felt like, it's all bespoke and it's custom, and, you kind of lean into the fact that, hey, that's my job as a consultant, is to craft this very specific thing and whatever. But, the longer I've been doing it, I've realized, man, we need to make it easier, because it's just a vehicle, right? Like there's no magic in the fund, right? The magic is in the person who is the general partner, right? The manager, and the investment manager, and the magic is in the value of their relationships and the value of their skills, right? And that's, and that's why I say, like, we got to have more people calling it what it is, and understanding that it's like, this is, it's micro, real estate private equity. Like that's it's what it is, small scale. It's not gigantic private equity stuff like most people are accustomed to, which, depending upon who you talk to, can have negative connotations, right? That's what all the words, English is one of the largest languages in the world, right? But, we still have trouble with, how do we call things to get them to spread? Because I believe that that's the trend that's taking hold, right? And it's been happening. I mean, look no further than ourselves on our real estate private equity shop, Fairway America. I mean, my partner, Matt, and I, this is what, we had the same light bulb go off as you did, which was, we know a bunch of people, we know a bunch of guys, we know how to, in our case, we were already fund managers, and we decided this is what we need to do. We can add value. But I'll tell you, we faced an uphill battle because a lot of people were very, it's double fees, it's a fund to fund, it's a whatever, like it's not without its sort of, friction and people not wanting to do it. And we press through that, but it's now that you're seeing that I would say in real estate, fragmentation is a feature. I mean, it's just, there's so much real estate. No one can control everything. I don't care if you're Blackstone or whoever, like, they don't have the corner on the whole thing, right? It's impossible. It's a local business. Real estate is local, location. That's who wins. The people who are near the real estate, who have their ear to the ground, are going to be the ones who figure out when there's a deal. Right. And to execute that strategy, if they're, value add play or whatever, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to look at stuff, a lot of work to do those things. And when you look to the adjacent space, like venture capital as an example, I mean, the same thing happened. It just happened 15 years ago or whatever in venture capital, where there was all these Sandhill Road, big venture capital firms, the giants, but then you had the angel investing movement where it just exploded. Right, where all these, because the same thing, it's also very fragmented. There's startups happening everywhere. They're not all in the Bay Area, right? You've got startups everywhere. And so you've got these angel groups and all these people that are forming, and it becomes more of a community, which you guys have experienced, obviously, like with active duty passive income. It's a community. But now this is what's happening in our space, is that in the real estate space, it's becoming a community, around how the capitalization occurs. And you see so much more cooperation and partnering and, all those things to get these projects off the ground, to get them done, which is great. Right. But they're also, what's also happening now is we need to have better defined sort of mechanisms. In my case, it's the investment vehicles and sort of the structures around those, one, to drive down costs, to drive down the time to market. Right. And to get these things off the ground and start allowing investors to get exposure more easily. That's why I do the podcast. I do it for this reason. One, I don't want it to be scary for people. I want them to not be intimidated anymore, like feel like it's accessible, to meet people, to see the differences, to understand the markets and those things. So I love it when I run into guys like you who've made that leap, right? Because a lot of people, like, they have the thought, but it's just, they're sort of like terrified, and everything in the world is telling them, don't do it, you're nuts. Not to mention, I've experienced it firsthand. They tell you that, they say no, they're not interested, right? But if we can get that word out, that it's like, listen, your ability to do it on your own. I mean, once again, if you want to do it too, that's great. Like, the more the merrier. But for most people, it is passive income it's passive investing. I mean, most people don't want to do it for a living in that regard. They do want to play more golf. That's the whole point of it. Hey, you don't need to just live off of your W-2 job. You can do just like you did. Right, you can start investing into the space. And the more that we create vehicles with guys like you that can truly make it much more passive, that's better for everybody. Now they can hedge their risk of their W-2 job, or, and they can go do what the hell they want to do, right, and get that same outcome. So, I think it's cool to see, I mean, especially from my perspective, considering that I kind of feel like a pioneer. Like we kind of already. We already went down that path, and now to see a bunch of people after us is kind of cool, right? Like, yeah, this is working. So, how about you? Like, with that said, what was that sort of friction for you? Like, when you made the decision, like, I'm going to start my own firm, Nimbus Capital. Like, how did that go?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was an evolution, really. So it started out, and I wanted to be like every other syndicator on the block. I surrounded myself with syndicators. It was my network. It's what I knew. Every guru out there, is teaching how to syndicate and how great it is and how wonderful it is, and multifamily is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But what I realized for me, it was about strengths and weaknesses. So like, I freaking hated managing the contractors and doing the asset management from afar on 8 units. Why the heck would I want to do it on 100, 500, or 1,000 units?
Yeah.
I have no interest in doing that. I just truly don't. What are my strengths? Well, I really love talking to people. I really love networking. I love building relationships. I love raising capital. That's the part that attracted me to real estate. And, so from there I was like, okay, well, how do I do this? And I'll tell you what, Lance, I beat my head against the wall for about 6 months and got told no so many times.
Yeah.
And everyone, from lawyers to, just everyone in my network said, no, you can't do that. You can't start a fund. That's not a thing. And the funny thing is, I tell this to people all the time. I won't put the lawyer's name on blast, obviously, but I had an attorney tell me that what I wanted to do and invest, start a fund to invest as LPs and other syndicators. He said, no, absolutely, you cannot do that. And then when I realized, that like stalled me, because I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He tells me can't do it. And then I just said, I got to stop saying no. I got to stop, taking no for an answer, because I know there's people that are doing what I want to do. Yeah. They're out there. So ended up going to getting some, kind of like go to a doctor, you get a second opinion. And I went there and kept asking around, and people are like, no, you need a fund attorney. So I went through like 9 or 10 SEC attorneys to find a fund attorney or actually, it was a guy like you, like an SPV consultant. Yeah. The consultant said, okay, you can definitely do this. There's people that are doing this, but you need to talk to the right attorney. Let me hook you up with this guy. Yeah. And then I talked to this person. He's like, yeah, I do that all the time for people, but I was so excited yet so pissed off at the same time, because I was like, yes, I can do it. And I was like, God, why did I just waste all this time?
I know. It's like I've been reading your mailman. I've been like, it surprised me that was your experience.
Yeah. Well, even before all of this, this secondary light bulb, if you call Rich Dad Poor Dad my first light bulb, this is like,
real estate,
turn it on.
Good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, but before this one, I've always thought, even before going on, becoming part of the ADPI team, it was helping millennials. And that was my passion. I wanted to help millennials as a millennial, graduating college or after the 2008 crash. And, I joined the military, and I'm glad I did. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad I did. Yeah. I'm glad I served, and I still serve. But there's a lot of friends that I have that got really, really screwed. Yeah. And to no fault of their own. I mean, you graduate college, you don't have any experience. How the heck are you going to find a job in a down market? It's pretty tough. People are experiencing that right now. Yeah. So, I really wanted to help millennials understand their finances. And to your point earlier, really what we focused in on is, when we're setting up Nimbus, we focused on 3 sets of ideal clients, and they range from all want to be passive investors, and they range from the folks in tech sector to the professional athletes that we work with, to actually high performing real estate agents and brokers. We've gotten a lot of traction with them, but ultimately, I was able to build a team that has the relationships with the syndicators, that has one of my partners has a complete full in-house marketing company that he owns, and they work with us. So we have a full marketing in-house. I have a social media influencer on my team who runs all my social, and like his job before this was just building people's Instagram accounts and blowing it up. So it's really exciting. And we're getting very, very close to going like full out with it. We've been doing pre-raise now for a while, but for about not a while, like 2 weeks, and we've raised nearly $1 million in 2 weeks. So
it's great, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it is. It's cool. Yeah. And like I said, I am a huge proponent of it. I think it's, for me, like it's one of those things that happens to you when you're so deep in the weeds. Like you end up, I mean, I tell people all the time, like, I'm not very good at many things. Like most things I'm terrible at, right? But there's like a couple of things I'm really good at. And I think this happens to a lot of people. But then you take everything for granted because it's like, well, I don't know. I just know all this stuff. Well, because all I do all day, it's all I've been doing for 13 years, right? And so what happens is you sort of become, I don't know, like, I think I got to a point where early on, like for us, just using the funds as an example, since, you kind of just went through this journey and are on it, right? Like, it was all funds all day long. And like, it was fun. I mean, it's like fund architects or whatever. I mean, like I tell people, like to feed our families, we had to convince people to start funds, whether or not they should have or not. That was a different story. And that was the balancing act. But then after a while, I'm like, dude, okay, it's so hard. Cause it is like, there's no question, like, and you're experiencing, good for you guys, like getting $1 million of traction, stuff like that. But it's tough. Like it's not easy. So I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, cause it's not. And we went through a time period, I did, where I was sort of like just talking everybody out of funds. Now, mind you, I'm a real estate fund administration firm. That's what we do. And I'm like actively talking people out of like, nah, you don't want to do it. Kind of like you. I mean, I wouldn't tell them you couldn't do it. I'm saying it can be done. No, trust me, it can be done. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just saying, maybe you just need to syndicate longer. Maybe you just keep doing what you're doing because I don't want to be the guy that talks you into it and then you're disappointed. But then, of late, I've just realized, I'm like, man, one, you can't stop people from having the idea that once again, there's something about it for many people that, they're going to want to do it anyway, right? They want to be a fund manager. It has this meaning, or one of my business partners calls it, it's like fund manager, like funds are like the pinnacle of finance, right? Like as he likes to say, and, whatever. I'm like, I don't know about that, but nonetheless, right, there's something to it. And so I've realized that it's like, okay, instead of focusing on how hard it is and trying to talk people out of it, right, it became this thing. It happened about 15 months ago, right? Like, because we went through a rebrand. We used to just be like sleepy old Redwood Real Estate Administration, and we rebranded to Verivest in July, right? But that was all like this process. And I realized, like, I'm looking at the problem the wrong way. It's that what I should be doing is I should just make it easier to start a fund, right? But all the other things that surround it, make those things easier, right? Because one of it is like, how do you get the word out that you have a fund? Even if you've got an audience, the audience is usually never big enough, right? You need, there's no place to be discovered, right? How would one know where all the funds are? And I had investors say this to us, like, man, it'd be great if like there's a place that I could just go where I could see like everyone that has a fund or has any deal. I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome, right? Like, great, and then you just go about your business. Then I started thinking about it. Like, we just need to make it easier. We need to simplify the structures. Okay. Because I've done this so many times. It doesn't need to be complicated, right? Like there's no magic in the structure. It is what it is, whatever the economics are and the risks that are taken, like those are just plug in numbers and you can go. And so we make it easier, all those sorts of things and that surround it. And then, just make it more turnkey, right? Like that's what we need to do. And now, because much of that was just the inertia of trying to get, to coordinate all those things is why people didn't make it. By the time they got to the end, they were so exhausted, they just decided to give up on it. Right. But it's more of this like advocacy, right, is the other piece, the way I see it. That's why a lot of times I preach this on the show. I'm just saying, like, investors, think of it this way. I know that you think you want to go direct, right? I know that you think that it's like, I got to go directly into the deal. And you're going to pick and choose. And I totally get that. Right. But you have to understand that the best sponsors and the best of the best are forging relationships now. It's already happening. So I'm saying the trend is happening.
With small private equity and large private equity. That's exactly
right. They're already doing that because from their perspective, it's hard enough to do what they're doing. They don't need, they need another 200 relationships. They need another hole in their head. Right. And so it's like for them being able to deal with more sophisticated people that understand the business and those sorts of things, they'd rather have fewer relationships like that are strong. And that means that you might never get a sniff of a deal directly that's worth doing. And you have to, like, I know we love the whole crowdfunding phenomenon and it is what it is, but it's just, you got to think about how it ultimately works down at the ground level. And this is what's happening.
And I'll tell you, and for your listeners that aren't really picking up what we're putting down here, because we're nerding out pretty hard on the fund space, and I love it, man. I freaking love it. But think of it this way: if you consider even a mid-size family office, it's hard to say what's a small family office, mid, large. So a mid-sized family office considered some, institutional money, right? Not talking pension funds, which are the big, large institutional, not even talking those.
Yeah.
A mid-sized family office is going to go to a syndicator, or a syndicator might approach them, and they need to raise, $20 million for their, in equity for their $130 million deal, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Right. Sounds like a lot of money, right? All right. Well, these private equity guys will be like, okay, well, our minimum investment is 10 million. So, we want all of your LP shares, or we want a big slice of your GP. Well, that puts the syndicator in a real tough position with all the other GPs that are doing, all of the work. So that's the niche that, that Nimbus and what Lance is what you guys do is we're filling that small PE with, what you call it, micro private equity or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
We're filling that and say, when the syndicator says, hey, I need 1.5 to close this thing out. I need, 750,000. All right, cool. Well, your typical retail investor is probably going to put between 200,000 and 300,000 into a deal. So you know what I'm going to do? I'll give you your 1.5, but listen, my shares at Nimbus, they ain't paying your 2% asset management fee. Yeah. They ain't paying your 1%, that ain't happening. So, that's how I protect my investors.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the benefits of working with, people say, oh, double fee. Well, guess what? At Nimbus, I don't charge any fees. I don't charge a management fee. I don't do it because it sucks. Fees suck. And then we leverage our buying power to help reduce the fees with our partners that we're working with. So I love the ability to keep it simple. I love the ability to, solve a problem. And something that we didn't even touch on is that, baby boomers, generationally, baby boomers are in the process right now. Over the next 25 years, baby boomers will pass on $68 trillion.
Yeah. With
a T, $68 trillion will be passed on to millennials. It's the largest wealth transfer in American history, in the history of this country. And sure, some of that money is going to, you can generalize it. And it's not like one guy's getting 67 trillion and the rest are splitting it all. Yeah. Point is that this wealth transfer is going to happen. And the next generation already doesn't trust banks because of 2008. Yeah. They're very tech savvy and they're looking for an easy solution. Like all the stars are aligned right now. So if you're on the fence and you're listening, you're thinking about doing what Lance and I do, freaking learn, listen to this podcast more and do it.
Yeah.
Because the stars are aligned right now. The opportunity is good. So try and do it. And it's honestly, it's not that hard. The thing I learned though, you got to talk to the right people.
No, you do, man. That's what I mean. Like, it's, and I call it relationships. It's like, you can't, I know that we want to believe that it's just like, I just push buttons and, and I get invested. Like, I know that would be great, like to think that way. But, and I think that's the key thing you have to understand is that you can't skip the step. It isn't just sit behind your computer and press buttons, invest or whatever. It's that what everyone's doing, even in this realm, is to be, and that's some people don't see it, but behind the scenes, that's all the guys in our space are doing, guys and gals are doing, is that they're building relationships with people, right? And so, that's the thing, and that's the other part of like that we came up with in the rebrand of Verivest, right? Was that I call it shortcut. How do we help shortcut the time to trust? Because to me, the other things and what sort of I think keeps a lot of people on the outside when they're trying to get into it net new is that they don't know who to trust. And it's reasonable, especially in this day and age. I mean, we can't even turn on the news and trust what we hear. We don't trust much of anything, which is really sad, but it is what it is. So why am I going to trust some person I just met? I mean, it's not enough anymore to just get like a reference or referral. Like, well, I know this guy, whatever. The transference of trust doesn't really happen maybe like it used to, right? So, and I heard this from a lot of, just passive investors and just investors in general of just, it's hard. There's a lot of friction in that, hey, I got a deal. Do you want to invest in it? Well, I don't know you. Like, okay, well, now the amount of overhead required for me to like get to the point I'm willing to even look at the deal. Sorry, I'm just not interested. So for me, it's, well, what are your concerns? Well, my concerns are, what if they're bad dudes? Like, what if they're charlatans, con men, and they're just, they look great, but they're not great. I'm like, okay, that's legit. Well, how do I run a background check? I'm investing 50 grand or 100 grand or 200 grand, or even $1 million. Like, it's clunky. Is everyone going to go and run background checks on every single person they meet? That's silly. Like, it doesn't make sense, not efficient. 2, well, they're claiming that they've done X, Y, Z. They've done all these deals, and everyone makes claims. I mean, it's just inherent in what we do. Here's, I've done it today. I've done 180 fund. If I said 8 is different than 180. 180 sounds a lot better. Well, how do you know if it's true? You don't know. It might have only been 9. I appreciate that. I would have to go and demonstrate it to you for you to go, okay, he's not lying. He actually did that. Right. So it's the same thing with a track record or whatever. So my thought was, well, once again, Verivest is sort of Switzerland. We're neutral. Let's just do it on behalf of the industry. That shortcuts the time to trust for everybody. Investors go, okay, I know what I'm getting. These guys are clean backgrounds. This track record that they're purporting has been corroborated. It's legitimate. And the kicker, right, is that after I invest, who's paying attention to everything? Because once again, I'm passive on the beach. I'm on the golf course. I'm doing whatever. And frankly, I don't know crap about how to look at this accounting stuff anyway. Like, I get it. I understand NOI is good and, and vacancy is bad and, those sorts of things. But how do I know that all the money is going where it should be going? How do I know that they their fee they calculated or didn't, how do I know? I don't know. I wouldn't know where to look. Right. And so for us, that's the sort of stuff. Like, if we can take that off the table, and it's like, I can pretty much guarantee you not invest in a Ponzi scheme, because we're making sure that everything's going where it is. They're not bad dudes. And even if they were, they wouldn't be able to rip you off. Right. So remove those things. That's friction. It's friction in the ecosystem. Remove it or mitigate it and allow it to come down to this is Kevin and his team, as an example, right? Are these guys are the quality of the relationships they built downstream and their ability to really keep track and make sure that additional tension, is the deal good? Like, does this make sense? Is the business plan sound? And are these guys able to execute? And if not, can we step in and sort of augment and make sure that we get this thing to the finish line? That's how it works. Sounds a lot similar to kind of what venture capitalists say, right? Hey, It's not just money. It's that we bring relationships and connections and they have these things. Funny how that works. Right. And so that's if all the constituents in the ecosystem have their clear roles, like you said, you're like, dude, I don't want to worry about contractors. That's not my thing. I'm a relationship guy. I'm good at, raising capital and bringing awareness and educating, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can do that. There's some guys who are just deal junkies who just know how to find a good deal. There's other guys who are world-class asset managers who just run roughshod on everything and make sure everything's going well. Right? Like, there's people like us, back office administrators, who just make sure that everything's done compliantly and accounting and all that boring stuff is done and tax returns, right? Those are all the blocks. And we put them together, we make magic. And now we've got, like you said, you got wealth transfer millennials, because we need to be prepared. Because I think you're right, man. Yeah. Right? This money's going to flow in, and they are not. See GameStop. This won't come out for however long, a month from now, or whatever. So way old news by then. But GameStop and AMC and all this stuff, and Robinhood, which was the darling, is now
it's
sort of
grassroots, man.
It's freaking a casino over there, right? And so now people are going, what can I trust? And it comes down to it. Yeah, multifamily is great. Real estate, it's people are realizing and they want exposure to this stuff, and it's grassroots. So it's an exciting time, especially given everything else seems to have been figured out in this world, right? But this little corner of the world somehow is frozen in time for a long time, and now you get to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'll it's really important to me to stress that making money is good. I want my investors to make money. I want to make money.
Yeah,
I want my team to make money. But it's not just making money. It's what you do with the money. Yeah. And that's impact. It's one of our core values. So our core values, unwavering integrity, transparency through excellence, and make an impact. Every fund that we have has an impact partner. It's a nonprofit that does good in the world. And this, this fund that we've launched, our impact partner, we're working with we're helping fight veteran homelessness. And this, I'm going to put these guys on blast because they're fantastic. Veterans Community Project. If you haven't heard of them, look them up. Veterans Community Project, Google them. What they do is they build tiny homes and small communities for homeless vets. And with the help of Veterans Community Project and other like-minded organizations, including active duty passive income, we will end veteran homelessness this decade.
Yeah.
We will end veteran homelessness this decade. It is completely possible. These communities are popping up all over the country, and they're taking vets off the street. They're training them. They're putting them back into the workforce. And it's just a fabulous, fabulous thing. So I challenge anyone who's out there, whether you're syndicating, whether you're investing, whatever you're doing, make an impact, do some good, because what are we on this planet for? We want to leave some sort of legacy, right?
Yep.
Well, then make some waves in your legacy, man. Just do some good.
Yep.
So I don't care who you invest with, but whether you're taking your returns and you're donating to charities that you care about, that's awesome. But like, I've turned away investors that are not aligned. Mm-hmm. And, they're not interested in they just want return. And we bring up, our impact partners like, it's not really for me. Then, well, there's plenty of other funds out there, go get some.
But to your point though, I mean, kudos to you guys though, Kevin, right? Like, I mean, most of the other, they're not doing that. Right. And so this is what I mean, like that's the maturation that needs to take place, is that it's not just about the mighty dollar. Right. And that's what it is. It's about going beyond just this hardcore, ruthless. Because not to knock like Wall Street or whatever, but let's face it, like this is the knock on sort of the financial services and, all this stuff, is that it's just cutthroat, ruthless, the almighty dollar. And I think that what comes along with it, and that's what I mean, we can shape this. See, that's what I call whatever. I know people like micro or whatever. I don't care what we call it. It's like, but let's give it a name. Let's put a fence around it. Right. And let people know and challenge each other. So as you go to do this, right, like, hey, you've built a tribe of people, you've got followers, you got investors, you got whatever, and you're going to turn up a little private equity real estate fund, to allocate into, other syndication, whatever. Like, the formula, it is what it is. But if you're going to do it, I challenge you, like Kevin and his team, like, then slice off some of the stuff that you are taking and put it into something worthwhile. Because that's usually the advice I give people is, unfortunately, most aren't even get to that point. They're still like trying to discover, do you have any conviction about your own thesis and strategy? Like to me, I'm like, okay, man, you're wondering why it's so hard. It's because you don't have any conviction, right? Because to me, like I always like to bring it up because I love this guy, Freddie Ellis with Watermark. Those guys like build the rent communities. These guys are just salt of the earth guys. But for them, it's like, are they, they're kind of riding this wave. They didn't even know what build to rent was when they decided to do this. The reason they did it is because they wanted to shape communities. They wanted to give the people that left the multifamily and started families a community worth living in, right? Like that's how they viewed it. They wanted to impact people, right? So it wasn't just like, I'm just creating amenities for amenities' sakes. They're saying we want amenities because it'll bring people together, because their hearts were broken over seeing how we were becoming so isolated as a nation. No more front porches, no more whatever, right? Like so, but that's conviction, man. Like that's them like saying that's what's driving their decision making. And like for you, that's what I mean. You're going, I'm passionate about millennials. I wanted to educate millennials. Isn't it funny how it works out that when you're following a passion or something worthwhile, that you bump in that you end up on this path of like, hey, you're going to launch your own private equity real estate firm, right? Like that's what led to that. Because it was based on your conviction to do something that said, I'm solving a real problem. And it's the same for me. Like the Madoff thing for me was the tipping point. When I saw that go down and I knew enough to know that it could have been avoided with one freaking phone call, I've been on a war path since then. I'm like, I'm tired of it. It's not good for anybody that you can get ripped off this easily and be defrauded on that level. And it's always the guys who look like they've got it all figured out. They're robbing everyone blind. Right. And so for me, it's like, I can look around and see that kind of activity. And I'm like, that's not going to help us. That's not going to help the whole thing. We have to fix this, and I don't care if you think I'm crazy, I'm going to do it anyway. Like it needs to be done. But it's conviction. Agree with it or not. I don't really care. I'm convicted by it. I don't want to see it happen. Right. And so
that's what drives people forward. It's what drives people into the future, drives people to their goals. And it's driving me away from my W-2. I love the Air Force. Yeah. They've given me some fantastic opportunities, but I'm getting out. In August, I'm going to go from captain to Mr. And I am very okay with that because I have found my path. I have found what I was meant to do on this planet. And it was to solve millennial wealth. One of the taglines that we say is, we turn rich people into wealthy people. And people always ask me, well, I'm rich. Like, what is wealth to you? And I said, well, wealth is not just money. Wealth is personal wealth. It's social wealth. It's how you feel on an emotional level, how you're connecting. It's spiritual wealth. Yeah. It's physical wealth. You can have all of these things, but making money isn't going to get you there. No. Search, giving back, contributing to the world and making the world a better place. That's a start. Mm-hmm. That's a heck of a start. So, that's what I like to tell people. And, some people get it and other people don't. And like I said before, man, there's a ton of funds out there. If you're not a fit, you're not a fit. And I guess that probably slaps, I'm sure there's some capital raisers out here who are probably shrugging their shoulders at me. Well, good. That's more money for me. Hey man, go and get it. It's a two-way street.
It's right. Abundance mindset, man. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, hey, am I passionate? Do I believe just like you? Like, yeah, I've got my thing. I've got the thing. There's plenty of people out there. Like, I'm not worried about that. Right. Like that's the whole point, right? That's why I don't need to worry about that. It's about, like you said, you'll turn people away if they don't align with your values and those things. It's just, it's because it goes back to your definition of wealth. It's just that, see, I'm at peace, right? I wake up, I do what I'm passionate about. I have 5 kids and a great wife and, family. Like I am wealthy in that regard, right? Same thing. I'm at peace. I'm not being eaten up alive, like worried over, things. Like that's what life's about, man. You want to have that peace, and it comes through, so everyone should be on, discovering that. If you're all a ball of knots and, all worked up all the time and doing business with people you don't like, like why? It's a waste of time. Yeah. So Absolutely. It's cool. Well, I'm glad we were able to hook up, man. I mean, it's like super excited with what you're doing, and it's awesome to meet you. And yeah, I love the purpose, like, having purpose.
And I'll tell you, Lance, the future is bright beyond multifamily real estate. I mean, I love multifamily just as much as the next guy or girl listening to this podcast right now. But what I'm really interested in, I'm working with a few folks now is integrating crypto into my fund. Mm-hmm. And allowing investors to invest their crypto, collateralize that crypto, and use that to not only make money from the interest on the crypto that you're collateralizing, but use that to go and invest in real assets, be it real estate. So that's something that is decentralized finance and finance 2.0 and all that stuff. That's a whole nother podcast worth, but it is kind of tip of the spear stuff that I'm really, really interested in. And maybe I'm just a visionary and one of those guys, but I think it's the future. I think tokenization of real estate will be here in the next quarter century. It will. And, I think if you're not ready for it or you don't know anything about it, you should open a book and learn about it, because it's here and it's not going anywhere. Let me put it that way. And everyone, there's so much real estate, any type of real estate, like it's like the amount of disruption that is available in this market, not just the financial market, the real estate specifically it's so ripe for disruption, whether we're talking being a real estate agent and the 6% commissions that you're getting, totally. Look at
everything's on the table. Yep. I agree.
Everything is on the table. And, there's people right now that are doing, they're doing crypto to crypto. They're selling homes, crypto to crypto in LA and in Silicon Valley. It's happening very rarely. Yeah. And it's not regular. I mean, it's like kind of regulated, but like,
well, and those are the things that are going to start to fall as the regulatory regimes begin to incorporate it. And it's I mean, there's no question in my mind. I'm with you. We did a ton of research on it, early going. And I mean, we're absolutely convinced the same is that it's going to happen, right? Like it's like many of these things like solar or whatever, like, it takes time, right, for it to take hold. But the notion of being able to unbundle everything, right? These income, whether it's the depreciation income stream, whether it's the appreciation or the whatever. I mean, like that's what the ability to tokenize anything is. You can just unbundle everything and get access and exposure to things you couldn't before. right? And so and now with, like I said, it's just that there's this underlying foundational technology, that's been building, right, that with everything else, and it's going to happen. There's no question in my mind, and that's why, like, even for us, just realizing you got to put these building blocks in place. That's what I mean. Standardized investment vehicles that do whatever and get all of that, lay the foundation, right? Because a lot of it comes down to, like, right now, the thing that kind of can stymie, the crypto or the tokenization of real estate oftentimes is just much of the benefit of investing in real estate has to do with the partnership status. So the pass-through status, not to mention just obviously the securities regulatory regimes as well, that, it's not, doesn't work that great for a lot of these things. Your ability to, trade them, and it's there, like, it's piped out, right? But those are some of the issues. Is just like, how do you deal with it, right? And those are the things that people are working on actively. And so it's only a matter of time before those sorts of things get squared away. And and as I tell all the sponsors or operators too, I'm like, this game is about accumulating assets. Like, you need to understand that it's not. Don't think of everything as just like 50 years out, right? Like, everything, like, you got to think the whole thing out. I'm like, it's about how can you get the assets, accumulate them, because your ability to parlay assets, once again, in the future is going to be different and more flexible. But if you don't have them, or if you parted with them and you sold them all off, which is another conversation. I mean, we could have like 20 episodes here, but it is, I'm with you, man. It's coming. And that's why I was saying, like, that's why it's exciting for young people, and you're younger than I am. But I mean, I like the fact that there's still some terrain left to be discovered, so to speak. Right. I like the fact that it was sort of like really, really old school and no one really shook it up. I mean, it's fun because I like disrupting things.
Keeps it interesting.
Yeah. It's more fun. So cool, man. Where can people find you? How do they find you?
So activedutypassiveincome.com. You can find me there. We have a private Facebook group with over 16,000 members now. And that company has grown to the moon. So if you're a veteran, if you're in the military, if you know a veteran and you want to get into real estate, look us up, the Active Duty Passive Income Podcast. You'll find myself and Mike Foster on there. If you want to learn about funds, if you want to learn about, what I'm doing and my team is doing with Nimbus Capital, super easy. It's www.risewithnimbus.com, one word. And you can find us on Instagram and all the social platforms. And if you just want to shoot me an email, that's cool too. It's kevin@risewithnimbus.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin, for your time, man. This was a blast. Loved it.
Yeah. Thanks, Lance. This was awesome.
All right, bro. Take care.
See ya.